Right now, somewhere deep in a tropical forest, a murder is happening in slow motion, and the killer has been getting away with it for 80 million years. It started with a bird, just a regular bird, doing regular bird things, eating fruit, flying around, not reading the terms and conditions on what it was carrying. It landed on a perfectly healthy tree somewhere 60 feet off the ground, left behind a tiny seed, and flew away without a single regret. That tree had no idea what just happened to it, but it was already over. If you've never heard of the strangler fig, buckle up, because by the end of this video, you will never look at a tree the same way again. And if you're the kind of person who loves nature doing absolutely unhinged things, hit subscribe right now. We do this every single week. Here is what makes this tree immediately strange. Every plant on Earth follows one rule. You start in the soil, you grow upward, you reach for the sun. That's it. That's the whole playbook. Billions of years of evolution, and that's the rule. The strangler fig looked at that rule, laughed, and did the exact opposite. The strangler fig begins its entire life 60 feet in the air. No soil, no ground contact, just bark, shadow, and whatever moisture drips through the canopy. It sprouts up there like it owns the place, and then, here's the part that still surprises botanists, it grows both directions at once, up toward sunlight and down toward the ground, simultaneously, like it's trying to do a split across an entire tree. Scientists call this Hemiepiphytic growth, which is a very fancy way of saying this plant skipped kindergarten and went straight to doing whatever it wants. And while those roots are slowly threading their way down the trunk of the host tree, searching for soil, sometimes taking years to reach the ground, something else is quietly beginning. The fig is settling in, making itself comfortable, getting familiar with the neighborhood. The host tree has no idea it just became someone else's real estate. Stay with me, because what happens next is where this story gets genuinely unsettling. Once those roots hit the ground, everything changes. The strangler fig has an anchor now, and an anchored strangler fig is a different animal entirely. The roots begin to spread outward. They thicken, they strengthen, and then they do something that no other plant on Earth does quite like this. Where two roots cross each other, where they make physical contact, they don't just touch, they fuse, they merge, they become a single structure. Dozens of individual roots slowly knitting themselves together into one continuous mesh, a living lattice, a cage, wrapped around the host tree from the ground up. And it keeps going, higher and higher, tighter and tighter, until from a distance you genuinely cannot tell where the host tree ends and the strangler fig begins. They look like one tree. They feel like one tree. Structurally, they have become one thing, but they are absolutely not one thing. Here's something that stopped researchers cold when they first discovered it. If two separate strangler figs, two completely different individual trees, happen to grow close enough that their roots make contact, those roots fuse as well. Two different organisms, separate trees, merging into a single shared network. You cannot tell them apart by looking. You cannot tell them apart by touching. The only way to distinguish two fused strangler figs is molecular DNA testing. Think about that for a second. A tree that can absorb another tree of its own species so completely that they become biologically indistinguishable. That's not a plant. That's a conspiracy. Now, the killing. Most people imagine the strangler fig wrapping around its host like a snake. Something dramatic, fast, violent. That's not how this works at all. The strangler fig has no interest in drama. The strangler fig is patient in a way that is almost personally offensive. It does not inject venom. It does not poison the soil. It does not cut off water supply overnight. What it does is structural, methodical, across decades. As the root mesh tightens, as the fig's canopy spreads above the host, blocking out the sunlight, the host tree begins to experience pressure on its vascular tissue. Those are the internal tubes that move water and nutrients from the roots up to the leaves. The strangler fig is, very slowly, squeezing those tubes, not cutting them, compressing them. Millimeter by millimeter, year by year, decade by decade, the host tree starts losing water flow, losing light, losing structural room to grow. It weakens, it slows, and here's the cruel irony that makes this whole situation genuinely disturbing. During that entire period, during the decades that the strangler fig is slowly killing its host, it is also protecting it. The fused root mesh acts as structural reinforcement. When hurricanes rip through the forest at 150 miles per hour, the host tree, wrapped inside this living cage, survives storms that flatten everything around it. The thing killing it is also keeping it alive, right up until the moment it isn't. It can take 50 years, 100 years, sometimes longer, but eventually the host tree dies. It rots from the inside out, the wood breaks down, fungi move in, decomposers do their work, and slowly the original tree simply dissolves inside the cage until nothing remains at the center. What you're left with is a hollow column, a tube of fused fig roots, standing perfectly upright where a tree used to be, a monument over an empty grave, a fortress that outlasted the very thing it was built on. And here is where the story completely flips. That hollow column, that structure built by a murderer, becomes the single most valuable piece of real estate in the entire forest. Bat colonies move in. Not one or two bats. Entire colonies, hundreds of them, roosting inside the hollow core, raising their young in the dark interior. Birds nest in the crevices between the fused roots. Reptiles shelter in the gaps. Tree frogs breed in the moisture that collects inside. Knoll lizards hunt insects along the outer walls. One tree, one hollow shell left behind by a killer, and it's housing more life than almost anything else in the forest. But that's still not the most important thing this tree does. The strangler fig produces fruit, small, round, marble-sized figs that turn orange and deep red when ripe. Nothing unusual about fruit, you might think. Lots of trees make fruit. Here's the difference. The strangler fig produces fruit continuously, not seasonally, not once a year, constantly. Different individual trees in the same forest fruiting at different times, so that no matter when you show up, dry season, wet season, after a drought, after a fire, somewhere in the forest there is a strangler fig with ripe fruit available, always. This is almost unheard of among large tropical trees, and every animal in the forest knows it. Migratory songbirds, American robins, warblers making 1,000-mile journeys depend on strangler fig fruit to refuel mid-migration. Without those figs, they don't have enough energy to complete the flight. Fruit-eating bats use the figs for food and the hollow trunks for housing. Howler monkeys, capuchins, return to the same fig trees again and again through the dry season when everything else stops producing. The strangler fig is running the only all-night diner in a 100-mile radius, and every animal in the ecosystem has the address memorized. And then there's the relationship that defines this tree more than any other, the one most people have never heard of. The fig wasp, Pegoscapus mexicanus, one species, tiny, invisible to the naked eye without a magnifying glass. The exclusive pollinator of this fig. This wasp and this tree have been locked in a co-evolutionary relationship for 80 million years. The female wasp enters the fig fruit through a microscopic opening to lay her eggs. In doing so, she pollinates the flowers inside. Her larvae develop inside the fruit. A new generation emerges. The cycle continues. She has roughly 24 hours to live. She was born for this one job. And if she disappears, if this one species of microscopic insect goes extinct, Ficus aurea cannot reproduce. At all. No backup system. No alternative. 80 million years of evolution, and the most important tree in the tropical forest bet everything on one insect. That is either the most elegant system in nature or the most reckless. Maybe both. Now step back and look at what this tree actually is. It starts life breaking the fundamental rule of plant growth. It builds structural strength through root fusion that doesn't exist anywhere else in the plant kingdom. It extends the life of its victim, even while killing it. It transforms a murder scene into the most biodiverse microhabitat in the forest. It produces food continuously when everything else goes dormant, and its survival depends entirely on one tiny wasp. The strangler fig is not a parasite. Parasites take without giving back. This tree takes one host tree, one, and in return it sustains birds, bats, reptiles, primates, insects, and migrating animals for centuries. It stabilizes the forest canopy against catastrophic storms. It provides medicine and materials that human communities have depended on for millennia. Latex sap used to heal wounds, stems used to make arrows, aerial root bark woven into netting. It is, simultaneously, a killer and a cornerstone, a murderer and a foundation. The most destructive organism in the forest and the most essential one. Both of those things are completely scientifically undeniably true at the same time, and maybe that's the most human thing about it. So here's the question I want you to carry with you. The strangler fig slowly, completely, over decades, kills its host. No remorse, no hesitation. And in doing so, creates something that sustains hundreds of species for centuries after the host is gone. Is that murder, or is that transformation? Is there a difference? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know where you land on this one because I've been sitting with this question for a long time and I'm still not sure I have the answer. If you know someone who thinks they've seen everything nature has to offer, a biology teacher, a friend who's too confident about how the world works, send them this video. Watch their certainty quietly crumble. It's deeply satisfying. Subscribe if you haven't already. Every week we go exactly this deep into the hidden lives of things most people walk past without a second thought. Stay curious. Stay wild. Every leaf has a story.